father worked in Silicon Valley, but not in software. I think the last generation here was more semiconductors, and software is definitely where the opportunity is right now, and definitely what's exciting right now. Embarrassingly enough, I did get my undergraduate degree in computer science, so I did finish that. And I know it's like not as cool to have finished it. I was an intern at PayPal, and I was working with Peter on a lot of projects afterwards. We're both nationally competitive chess players, and I was the editor of the Stanford Review, which Peter had created. So we had a couple of different things in common. PayPal was a very unprofitable business at first because the Chinese and Russian mafia were stealing all of our money. And so we were losing like $6 million a month. And the problem was that if you try to ask people for all their information before they send any money, they would just go use another service. So you had very sparse information, and you had to be able to fight fraud even though you knew very little about your customers. And it turns out, even though you know very little about any single node, you could use the network to find out more. So basically the relationship between accounts, the relationship between activity and behavior around accounts is enough to teach you about what's going on. The challenge is you can't just have the computer learn from that network, because whatever the computer learns, the bad guys are smarter. The bad guys are adaptive adversaries, and so they'll figure out what your AI is detecting and they'll change their behavior. So it turns out in order to stop the bad guys, you need both to have a really strong AI computer layer, but then also you need to have human analysts and tools to help the human analysts see what was going on. 9/11 seemed like a real problem, and it seemed like a problem that we didn't have good defense and intelligence systems to deal with these things. The top people were not going into these areas. How do you take the technology and the lessons that we learned fighting fraud and apply it to national security? Grew into Palantir. So Palantir focuses exclusively on the platform to help human analysis. We started in the defense world, and there's about 1 million people in the defense world who are some form of analyst, and the technology is built exclusively for those analysts. The US government spends over $40 billion a year gathering data in the intelligence community. So it has enough data, it has tons of data, it knows everything that's going on in human intelligence, signal intelligence, all different types of data, and analyzing that data securely and appropriately and collaborating in the right ways. That's a really hard challenge. Peter's foresight to back it when everyone else said it was crazy is Peter really gets the credit himself for being the investor. There's this general thing entrepreneurs go through that after you've had one big success, you feel like you can just conquer the whole world, which is partially true and partially not. And Palantir, to a lot of people, was probably like the craziest of these ideas. It was a bunch of kids who thought they could take these things they learned in Silicon Valley and apply it to fixing how international defense worked. It was inspired by seeing the government waste tens of billions of dollars on technology solutions that were not based on how you actually build technology solutions. It was based on how you reward big defense contractors with giant contracts to build crappy technology. After the financial crisis, I realized that a lot of the reason that stuff's so broken in finance is because the technology platforms are so bad and the transparency is so bad. And so I was really inspired to kind of step in and try to fix that part of the world, and realized it needed to be done as a separate company. So that's what we're doing at Addepar. Make things more open, because pretty much everything being done is a closed platform by a bank, built for its own advantage and not built for actually helping the system be functional. There's all these institutions that just wouldn't exist if the government hadn't stepped in and bailed them out. And there's all these management that should have been fired during that process that weren't fired. And they're all building closed platforms. There are a bunch of third-rate technology groups that have access to billions of dollars. There's all these middlemen taking rents in our society that shouldn't be doing that, and they're doing it because they use the government to help them out and because there's really no one to challenge them. By building open platforms, we're basically helping our customers who actually have the wealth themselves disintermediate the middlemen and get better access to what's going on. And we think as more and more people build open platforms in this space, it'll force it to open up and it'll actually have a lot better results for global finance. We're in the middle of an industrial revolution. There's a whole new way that all these big industries should work. So there's this big gap between what exists in healthcare and energy and finance and government, and logistics. There's a big gap between what exists now and what's possible given all the new information technology. It's going to transform nearly every major industry, and it's going to create a huge amount of wealth and disruption.